In this next section, we're going to go in and talk about what's new in ECMS 2 as far as agreements and agreement information. We'll talk about agreement types, selection processes, new statuses that you'll see for agreements and parts and work orders. We'll also talk about how you can access information through the agreement information screen and searching for agreements through the agreement portal. We'll also talk about the DBE goal tracking information you'll see, some new supplement types, and finalizing agreements. The agreement types should be familiar to consultants. Here we have project-specific agreements and open-end agreements. What's new in ECMS 2 is open-end subtypes. So the first type there is a non-project specific open-end agreement, which is a regular open-end agreement. There is a new subtype for project-specific for open-end agreements, for open-end project-specific agreements. There's also a subtype of task-specific for open-end task-specific agreements. So the open-end agreements will now have a subtype, either non-project specific, project specific, or task specific. What's new with the selection processes is there's now support for enhanced modified selection process. So again, the normal and modified still the same selection process. There's a new process for enhanced modified, a new selection process for enhanced modified, and local and sole source are the same as today. I want to talk a little bit about the agreement statuses that you'll see in ECMS, and this covers the normal selection process. I want to talk about the difference with the modified selection process as well. So as the agreement will go through the life cycle, you'll see that the statuses are a little clearer now to really tell you where that agreement is in the life cycle. So the first status that you see there is the setup status. And this will occur once the agreement has been created in ECMS. The next status is plan project published, once the plan project has been published. Once the advertisement has been published, the status will change to advertised. Once the statements of interest deadline has passed, the status will change to SOI review. And once the shortlist has been approved, the agreement status will change to shortlisted. This is where consultants will first come in and see that agreement status. The next status is selection review once the technical proposal due date has passed. If the technical proposal due date is extended, the status would revert back to shortlisted. On the right-hand side is once the agreement has the final ranking approved, the status will change to final ranked. Once price proposals have been submitted, the status would change to negotiation. If by any chance an alternate is selected, the status would revert back to final ranked. Once the draft legal agreement is created, the status will change to negotiation completed. If that legal agreement is deleted, the status would revert back to negotiation. Once the legal agreement has been executed, the status will change to executed. And once the notice to proceed, or NTP, has been issued for a part, or the legal work order has been executed, the status will change to active. So once that occurs, there are some additional statuses that you may see. Once the legal agreement is executed and you have active parts or work orders. In the upper left-hand corner, the first status here you see is idle. And that will occur when the final invoice has been received on all parts and work orders. That status can change from idle, and that's what you see underneath the idle box. The status can change to active or expired status if the final invoice indicator is removed. The status can move to active status if a part or work order is activated or a supplement is executed. The status can move to expired status if the last part or the open-end agreement expires. And if the agreement is finalized, then the status would change to final status, or the part or the work order. The next status over is expired, and that will occur once the last part or open-end agreement expires. From expired status, the status can be changed to final status if the finalize button is clicked. The next status over is final, and that will occur when the finalize button is clicked, when the agreement is in executed, idle, or expired status. The agreement can be broken down and returned to expired and idle statuses by the CAD chief. The last status there on the right-hand side is when the agreement is deferred or the cancel button is clicked, the status will change to canceled. The agreement can be deferred when the agreement is in setup, selection review, final ranked, and negotiation statuses. The agreement can be canceled when the agreement is in setup through negotiation status. I'd mentioned that was for the normal selection process. For a modified selection process, there is no SOI review status. The statement of interest or the SOI deadline passes and moves the status to selection review. Final ranking is then based on the statements of interest. There's also no shortlisting status or shortlisted status, as the shortlisting step is omitted. I also want to talk about some of the part and work order statuses you'll see. On the left-hand side are the statuses the part will go through during the life cycle, and some additional statuses on the right-hand side. Starting on the left-hand side, the first status is setup. This is when the part is first created in ECMS. Once the scope of work is published, the status will change to in process. Once the price proposals are submitted, the status will change to negotiation. Once the legal agreement has been executed, the status will change to executed. Once the notice to proceed is issued for a part, the part status will change to active. It can also be changed to on hold if the part is placed on hold. Once that on hold is released, the status would change back to active. On the right-hand side, you'll see the idle status once the final invoice is paid on a part. That can change back to active status if there is a supplement approved. And just a note there, the notice to proceed is issued for supplement parts automatically upon the supplement execution for any current parts that already have the notice to proceed or NTP issued. On the right, the next status down is final. A part will change to final when the part button is clicked. The CAD chief can break down a part and it can be returned to idle, expired, or executed status. The last status there on the right is canceled, and that will occur once a cancel button is clicked when the part is in setup, in process, or negotiation statuses. You'll see the work order life cycle and statuses are very similar to the part. Along the left-hand side is the work order life cycle statuses, and then some additional statuses you'll see on the right-hand side. So the work order will be in setup status once the work order is created in ECMS 2. The status will change to in process once the scope of work has been published. Once price proposals have been submitted, the status will change to negotiation. Once the legal work order has been created, the status will change to negotiation complete. Once the legal work order has been executed, that serves as the notice to proceed to the consultant. The status will change to active. Once the work order is in active status, the status can change to on hold if the work order has been placed on hold. Once that hold is released, the status will revert back to active. On the right-hand side are some additional statuses. The first one on the right there is idle, and that will occur when the final invoice has been paid on a work order. The next status down is expired once the expiration date passes for a work order. You'll see that can be changed if a time extension is issued, and that's the arrow going to the left. If a time extension has been issued, it can revert back to idle status or active status. The next status down on the right is final, and that will occur when the finalize button is clicked. From final status, you'll also see, and this is the arrow going to the right, the work order can be broken down and returned to idle, expired, or active status. The last status there on the right is the canceled status. The cancel button, once the cancel button has been clicked, the status will change to canceled. And that's if a work order is in setup, in process, or negotiation statuses. Talked about the agreement information that we'll see, and we're going to access the agreements in ECMS 2 through the agreements portal. That is a search portal you use to go search for your agreements. So the agreement part and work order search screen will allow you to search for agreements using a quick jump search. So if you know your agreement number or your agreement and part or work order number, you can enter in those numbers, hit your enter key, and take you right to the screen, the agreement or part work order screen. There is also an advanced search where you can go in and set search criteria, and you can also save those searches. So if you're always searching for an agreement by particular criteria, you can go in and save those search so it'll be there every time you come in. There are also preset express searches that will allow you to quickly access agreements. Once you get to the agreement information screen, that will list all of your information for your agreement. And there's a new concept here of a main page for your agreements. You'll really go to your agreements to create or edit any agreement documents, such as your technical proposal and price proposals. You'll also see cost and expiration summary information. DBE, goal, commitment, and attained information will also be listed on the agreement information screen. And there will also be a list of all parts and work orders. So agreement information is really like a jumping off point to view information about your agreement. Everything you need is right there. You can also access your parts and your work orders from there as well. Wanted to talk about some of the new supplement types that you'll see in ECMS 2. There is a normal supplement type, which is the same as it is today, a no-fee supplement type, an open-end time extension, and an administrative supplement type. And talk a little bit about those new supplement types. As I mentioned, the normal supplement type is the same as it is today. The no-fee supplement is only for project-specific agreements, and the profit factor must be 0 on all parts. You can change the part costs and can transfer money between consultants within the same part, but you cannot transfer money between parts. For an open-end time extension, you can extend the expiration date for the original agreement, change the DBE percentage, And this is only for open-end agreements. It's not applicable for project-specific agreements. For an administrative supplement for open-end agreements, you can add subs using a generic task. And you can also change the DBE percentage. For project-specific agreements, you can also change the DBE percentage, change the part expiration date, and transfer money between consultants on each part. But each part must have a net change of $0. There is a new process in ECMS 2 to finalize agreements. Once the agreement is reaching the expiring, there will be a reminder for expiring agreements, expiring parts, or expiring work orders. So once the agreement gets to the end point and it's nearing the expiration date, there will be a reminder. And that's also something else new that you'll see in the work queue. That's another good reason to go into your work queue, to view information that's something you have to do, or here in this case it will give you a reminder about something that's expiring. Before an agreement will be finalized, the consultant evaluation must be completed for prime consultants, and all parts or work orders will be finalized before the agreement is finalized. One additional point here about what's new with agreements. There is a new assignment agreement attachment, which will provide capability to attach an electronic copy of an actual assignment agreement legal document. In the next section, we're going to go in and take a look at a demonstration of agreements and see some of the things we've been talking about.